When you're a kid, you can always rely on a few constants. School, playtime, snacks, books, and imagining you're going on adventures with your favorite fictional characters. Maybe you get your friends in on your silly sessions of make-believe, but maybe you take daydreaming a bit too literally and start telling people you have a massive secret, and then get ridiculed for said secret in the most Disney Channel way possible, which makes you turn your delusion into fan fiction instead. I've been making videos on TikTok for quite a while under a few different aliases, but if you've never met me, I'm J Money, and when I was 8 years old, I used to write stories about my escapades with Phineas and Ferb as my best friends.
Pretty sure it's gonna be awesome when it finally comes out on fanfiction.
I had a ton of blurbs and story ideas in various notebooks, from basketball tournaments to birthday parties to preventing the Toons from being arrested for, being Toons, I guess, to stopping the world from ending in 2012. I didn't even really write anything about that one. All we have is the title. 2012, the end is coming. Hey, I stand corrected, I did find 2 sentences that I wrote about it back on, wouldn't you know it, the 22nd of December 2012. Here it is. On December 21st, 2012, the Mayans believed the world would end. It didn't, thanks to 5 courageous tweens and a talking dog. I actually did believe that, the sun would explode or something on the winter solstice that year, which explains why this was probably written the very next morning. But anyway, as you can probably tell, instead of filing all these writings away for 15 years like a normal person, I saved it. I saved as much of it as I possibly could. And in the process of continuing to think about this story for so many years, the universe grew exponentially. I began adding new characters from different shows and adding more mature and complex themes. When I started my PFJ TikTok account during my senior year of high school in 2021, I set out to put the whole story out in little bite-sized narrative pieces for the people to enjoy. But turns out I am a perfectionist who spent so long trying to make things perfect that the motivation slowly died. But then I discovered that video essays tend to do fairly well on YouTube these days, so why don't I just drop the whole story at once, and then anyone who wants to follow the creation of the parts more in-depth after that can go right ahead. And hey, it gives me the chance to do what I do best when it comes to PFJ. Blab for hours about it. So that's what we're gonna do here and now. The modern version of PFJ is split up into 16 story arcs across 6 parts. The story arcs all have names and the parts don't, except for part 6, which is titled The Final Chapter. I know, it's so creative and compelling and awesome. Before we begin, I want to talk about the main character of the series. Her name is also Jasmine Malone, but that's pretty much where the similarities end. When I started writing her when I was 9, yeah, at that point it was just me injecting myself into scenarios I made up for fun.
I'm not really sure I can do this anymore, guys. Don't worry, you'll be fine.
But as the story has grown and evolved, so have the characters. And in the version of the narrative we're going to be talking about, this character does not reflect anything I would say or do ever. So why don't you change her name, I hear you ask? Well, the answer's really simple. Changing her name would be disingenuous to the vision that 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old me had for this story. This is what she wanted. This is why the story is called PFJ, and I'm simply honoring that. That said, let's get into it, starting with part 1. So part 1, in its relative entirety, has already been completed, and is here on YouTube to watch. So if you've already seen it, or you just want to give this part of the story the old phantom blood treatment, you can skip ahead to part 2. Phineas and Ferb come to life. Phineas and Ferb create a portal to another dimension, which gets supercharged when it gets struck by Doofenshmirtz's Inator of the Day, and when they go through it, they find themselves in the real world, specifically in the backyard of local, unremarkable 11-year-old Jasmine Malone, who helps them create a portal back home using scrap metal and parts from her school's metal shop. They nearly get caught by this little kid, but Jazz gets him to leave them alone, and certainly that kid won't make an appearance ever again. When they finish the portal, they develop such a good rapport that they become friends, despite the fact that Jazz has to hide them from her parents and keep them a secret from literally everyone. That's story number 1. Story number 2, Fetch with Phineas and Ferb. If you've heard of PFJ, this is probably why. A year after the events have come to life, Phineas and Ferb get a letter from Ruffman inviting them to be on the inaugural season of Celebrity Fetch with Ruffman. This letter actually ends up at Jasmine's house, and while she's trying to do the mental gymnastics of how this is possible, Phineas and Ferb go off to the Boston of their dimension to accept the offer. But when they get there, the TV station turns them away. They're like, we didn't send you this letter. I don't know who sent you this letter or who the fuck Ruffman is. But, bye guys. Not only that, but they're stranded in Boston when their portal remotes break. So now Jasmine has to help them out, but she has no idea how to navigate Boston, let alone in an alternate cartoon dimension. So somehow she reprograms the portal that's in her closet to take her directly into the doghouse of one Ruffman.
Ah!
Hi.
What?
I need your help.
Who are you?
Oh, why, yes, that is Jim Conroy, the actual voice of Ruffman. And he did portray Ruffman in some teenager's fanfiction. Thanks for asking. Jasmine scares the shit out of him naturally, and then she convinces him to come help her find Phineas and Ferb because this whole debacle is his fault. Obviously. So they both show up in the Boston of the Phineas and Ferb dimension, where they're immediately spotted by some locals who make a scene, because they still look the same way they would in their original dimensions. If you've ever seen Space Jam, or Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or dare I say it, Space Jam 2, then that's what they look like. So they run away down the street, and they laugh about the absurdity of their situation, and then they find the happy-go-lucky Phineas and Ferb, whose remotes are already fixed because they fixed them. So everyone's like, okay, cool. So you didn't really need our help? Alright. So they all go home, but before Ruff leaves, Jazz gives him one of the remotes and tells him that he can come hang out anytime.
I'm glad this happened. I was kind of looking for a change in my life anyway.
Ruff is a real one. He's now part of the squad. If having Jim Conroy do Ruffman in the story isn't the reason you know about PFJ, then it's definitely because of Wildcrat's lore, but it's not real lore because I made it up. Wildcrat's lore, except it's not real lore because I made it up. There's not really a reason as to why I placed this story in this position in the series, because it's completely standalone from anything else that's going on. What I'm going to be explaining is the backstory specifically. A lot of this story lines up with the real-life locations and career beats and alma maters of the real-life Kratt brothers, but I want to make it clear that all of this is fictionalized. I don't know these men, they don't know me, I hope. I'm just using their characters. Martin and Chris live in suburban New Jersey, we all knew that. They're both big animal nuts, and Martin's a bit of an amateur vlogger, so one day he goes out into the woods with his little brother Chris at the camera to go take video of some bears behind their house. They find a mama bear and her cubs, and they ooh and ah at them for a little while, until one of the bear cubs gets too close, and Mama starts, like, running at the guys, and they run away, and Martin is having the time of his life. Chris is literally 14, so he is freaking the fuck out. He's like, oh my god, we're gonna die, and Martin's like, are you filming this? He's a madman. They don't die, they make it back to their house unscathed, and then a few hours later, Martin walks across the stage at his high school graduation. A good creature adventure waits for no man, especially not Martin Kratt. He takes a gap year to go on more creature adventures and stuff, and then his college of choice is Duke University, where he goes for zoology, naturally. The man is vibing, he's having a great time. Fast forward to his junior year at Duke. One morning, he's at his locker, because I guess in order for this story to function, we need lockers somewhere. When a girl is speeding down the hallway, just in dead sprint, runs into him, all her papers go flying everywhere, they fall on the floor. She's picking them up, she's apologizing profusely, and Martin's like, no, it's okay, I'll help you out. He's picking up the papers, and he picks up one in particular. It's a blueprint, and the subject of this blueprint nearly makes him faint. It's a mock-up of a vest that would allow the wearer to take the form of an animal. So he's like, oh, holy shit, what is this? And she's like, oh, it's nothing, just a project I've been working on, and you wouldn't understand. And he's like, try me. I'm Martin, and he invites her out for coffee so she can tell him more about this design. Her name is Aviva Corcovado, and she's a freshman majoring in biotechnology. She wants to take advantage of the wonderful natural capabilities of these animals by mass producing these suits that can replicate them and then creating an industrial and economic boom. Martin's like, that sounds rad as hell and I want to help you. So for the next year, they start developing this technology and their friendship in the process. Aviva programs the tech while Martin gets to spout off cool animal facts and help her with the design and figure out the logistics of how the suit would function and how a person might react to wearing it. When they're nearly finished with the prototype is when they start getting serious about it, and by that I mean that they could test the suit out while doing field research for a school that can give them money. Chris comes down from his own first year at college, and Martin introduces him to Aviva and fills him in on what they're gonna do. Aviva, this is my brother Chris. Chris, this is Aviva Corcovado, biotechnology. Biotechnology? We've been working on an invention that could be a breakthrough for the scientific community. A bodysuit that can emulate the abilities of any animal. It's so cool. Wait, a suit? Mm-hmm. Animals have more advanced abilities than we'll ever know, and with this technology, we'd be able to understand so much more about the way they live. And I just so happen to find the perfect field partners. We're gonna start asking around for funding from major universities. Imagine what this could mean for creature adventuring. Are you in, Chris? Well, yeah, this sounds awesome, Aviva. But a suit that could turn us into any creature? We're talking research on a global scale. Besides the suit, what are we gonna come back with? Well, I may have a plan. What? This guy's gonna write himself a doctorate thesis. Doctorate? But you just got your bachelor's. Doesn't that take years? Apparently not. Well, not unless we wanted to. If I can just finish a dissertation and defend it to a panel, I could have a PhD as soon as I want it. What would you even do with a PhD? I don't know, settle down, become a professor, teach somewhere like Harvard or Princeton, make tons of money? It'll be cool. There it is. There's what? For as long as I can remember, every plan you've ever made has cycled back to it'll be cool. Does the idea of turning literally into animals not sound cool to you? You got me there. So Martin and Aviva apply to a few big-name universities looking for funding, and they go into their grant panel and they present their yet untested prototype, but the first few they go to are all really unsure about the viability and stability of the tech, and they turn them down. Why wouldn't they just apply for a grant from Duke, I hear you ask? Well, they're basically guaranteed a decent grant from Duke because Martin's their star student, so they try to go for some bigger schools first before taking that option. Their meeting with the grant advisors from Princeton University is the most notable. Not because they liked or believed in the concept of what they were doing, but because this panel is sexist as fuck, and they start subtly putting Aviva down for designing this as a woman and doing the bulk of the presentation. Martin is absolutely not having this, so when they leave the room and she's trying not to look upset, but she really is, he goes back in and he gives them what for. He's like, you guys are a bunch of dicks, this woman is brilliant, and we're gonna do this and be successful whether you like it or not. And then a week later they get a letter saying that not only has Princeton accepted their application, they've granted them like $50,000 more than they originally asked for. So now that they're on track to do some research, they'll need a central hub for their operations that can travel with them, and it'll need to run on sustainable energy, because they're going to need to go to a lot of different places. So Princeton hooks them up with a freshman named Koki, one of their brightest mechanical engineers. The three of them design the Tortuga and have it built, and Koki calls on her nerdy gamer best friend Jimmy Z to be their pilot. Jimmy's not a particularly good pilot, and he doesn't even go to Princeton, he just kind of lives at their dorms for some reason. I don't know why I wrote it that way. But the logic is that if he only flies this turtle ship, then the school he actually goes to doesn't have to worry about losing money, and he'll get really good at it over time. Which he does. And because the ship was designed in part by Koki, she can make everything Jimmy friendly. So even an idiot can fly the Tortuga. Originally, Princeton gave them a 1-year grant to prove that the suit works, and that's when season 1 of the show takes place. Then once they do show that the suit is viable, then the rest of the series takes place on research grants given to them by Princeton, to do both their own wildlife research and assignments given to them by the university. While they're doing all this research, they run into a few people trying to profit from animals in a less ethical way. Zach Varmatek, Aviva's ex-boyfriend from a one-time STEM summer camp and former neighborhood best friend of Martin and Chris, who founded a tech company.
Varmatek Industries, turning varmints into robotic solutions. Zach Varmatek, head genius speaking.
And he really wants to popularize using animals in technology directly. Like inserting the animal into a robot. But the crew always destroys the inventions before he can get them off the ground. Gaston Gourmand, who used to run a really shitty New Jersey restaurant before Jimmy, who was a cook there at the time, tipped off Martin to the fact that he was really shady, and they called the FDA, who stripped him of his gourmet chef's license since most of his dishes came from some illegal poaching. So now, he still poaches animals, but now he's trying to sell them on the black market as rare delicacies. And Danita Donata, who is just insane about following new patterns and trends as a high-end fashion designer. She doesn't have any past connections to the crew, but she picked up the nickname Martino from Aviva, and she uses it to make him uncomfortable.
Very entertaining, Martino.
You know my style, Martino.
She is nuts, and I love her. So yeah, that's pretty much all the backstory you need to know. Everything else that's covered in the lore series is about how the suits actually work and other little things from their past, like how Martin's love for animals came from a trip he made with his family to Madagascar at age 5, where he met a lemur and named it Zabumafu, but I digress.
Waka waka doodoo yeah!
The Secret Chapter. Switching back to Phineas and Ferb, this story is also standalone, and I always have mixed feelings when I talk about it publicly because I know Dan and Swampy are so crystal clear in their intention to never ever talk about Phineas and Ferb's other parents. But that's because they're already a happy family, and I 100% respect that. But what if? Anytime you bring an OC into a fanfiction, you kind of have to work to make the story cohesive enough with the rest of the canon and make them likable enough to be a protagonist. And I think that's what I've got here with Harriet. 3 years younger than Ferb, she's loud, opinionated, and confident, super fiery, and willing to stand up for what she thinks is right. But at the same time, she's got a temper that would be perfectly balanced by a quiet and stoic older brother. But she doesn't really have one of those until the events of this story. So Elizabeth Harris is a big-shot real estate agent in London, and she raises her daughter Harriet as a single mom. Trying to raise her rambunctious little girl to be a lady is quite the task, but keeping her past hidden is even more difficult. Harriet has never met her father, and Elizabeth refuses to talk about him in any context ever. The only clue she has is that she was given her father's last name at birth. She also found her birth certificate and her mom's diary in a box in the back of her closet, which turns this whole thing into a weird, goofy version of Mamma Mia. But, like, she doesn't really know how to use any of this information, so they're just things she has. One day, Elizabeth and Harriet are in Danville on a business trip when their car breaks down in the suburbs, and the locals direct them up the street to teen mechanic Phineas Flynn. And when they get there, Elizabeth marches up to the door and she starts explaining the situation while clicking through her phone for insurance or something, but she doesn't realize that the person she's talking to is her ex-husband. Lawrence answers the door, and our boy is just flabbergasted, right? And then she looks up, and she's like, oh, shit. And then Harriet figures out what's going on, and they all meet, and Lawrence is like, how about some tea? Because this poor man has no idea what to do. So basically, when Lawrence and Elizabeth divorced, Liz had already been pregnant with Harriet, and Ferb was like 2 years old. So they decided that each of them having one kid would be best. So Elizabeth hid the existence of Lawrence and Ferb from Harriet. And Lawrence, well, he didn't really hide her existence because she hadn't been born yet, but he kind of forgot she existed, so surprise, bitch, you have a daughter. So Linda's like, Lawrence, what the fuck? And Ferb's like, Dad, what the fuck? And Phineas is also like, Dad, what the fuck? But true to form, he's trying to bring some positivity to the situation. So he's able to bond with Harriet really well from the get-go. So she shows him and Ferb the diary, and they notice the back cover looks a little bit bigger than the rest of the book, so they tear off the paper, and all these torn out pages of the notebook scatter to the ground, and all of them detail how Elizabeth cheated on Lawrence and how she decided to raise her daughter as though her father had never existed. So Harriet is pissed, and she and her mom have an argument that results in Liz leaving in the car that was just fixed by Phineas in like 2 seconds, I guess, at some point. I don't know when he would have done that. And Harriet's like, well, I guess I live here now. They let her stay in the guest bedroom, and everything's kind of tense for a day or two. Harriet's trying to be happy, but something's still not right. Candace stops by to visit, and when she meets Harriet, she's like, Dad, what the fuck? But eventually she and Harriet are having a conversation, and Candace accidentally makes it seem like it's Harriet's fault everyone's so unhappy, so she runs away. She leaves her phone there, so when everyone notices she's gone, they get a hold of Elizabeth, who's been trying to reach her herself to apologize. And eventually they all find her at the beach near a cliffside, sitting on a rock and being sad. She refuses to listen to anyone, but then Ferb sits down next to her, and they have a heart-to-heart about how insane the last few days have been, but at least they have each other, and it's super-duper wholesome. So Harriet gets up and goes to face her mom, who apologizes about ever hiding the truth from her, and allows her to choose where she can go from here. So now she lives with Phineas and Ferb and their family, and the growing pains of this are shown a bit more clearly in the next story. But also, I think this is the only story in the whole series that has an epilogue relevant to the next part of the plot. It's not really attached to the previous story either, but chronologically, this is when it's supposed to happen. It's about a couple weeks after the last part, and Jasmine is in bed reading a book when the portal in her closet activates, and, what do you know? Ruffman steps out.
Hey, just kind of wondering, is it cool if I, just kind of crash here for a bit? No, don't worry. It'll be like I'm not even here. Oh, I'm sorry. I can fix that. I probably can't, though.
Sure. Not too long, though, right? My mom doesn't know about the whole cartoon thing.
Oh, yeah. No, sure, it'll only be a few... This is a couple of... hey, whose poster is that?
Well, then, yeah, sure, I'll go get some extra blankets.
Oh, sweet! Thanks! You're a lifesaver.
And that's where part 1 ends. So because part 1 is already pretty much finished, we're going to talk about part 2 in this video as well. But the rest of the parts will be their own separate videos because otherwise this is going to be, like, way too long. This is where the story ramps up just a little bit in maturity, but it's just a gentle ramp. You know what a parabola looks like? Yeah, so we're currently here, and the end of the story is way up here in terms of maturity and complexity. You'll see what I mean. Anyway, Dreams of Magic. From the moment it was created in 2012, I had big plans for this story. Before we get started, we need to do an age check, because PFJ takes place over a number of years, and so the amount of time that passes is important. Jasmine, Phineas, and Isabella are 14, Ferb is 15, Harriet is 12, Ruff is a dog. So finally, here is Dreams of Magic. It's Saturday morning, which doesn't mean much to a 14-year-old in the summertime, but the energy is the same. We see Jasmine shuffling into the kitchen to fix herself a bowl of cereal. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. Are you okay? Yeah, Ruff, I'm fine. Just never do that again. I'm sorry. It's okay. Jasmine and Ruff don't vibe together quite as well as they thought, so the last week has been pretty awkward, especially considering she has to hide them from her parents and everyone she knows. That was a close one. My mom almost saw you. Yeah, I guess that would have been hard to explain. It's a really nice day outside. Well, yeah, but I can't really take you out like this. Remember last time? What, take me out? What do I look like, a dog? Yeah, you got me there. Well, what if we hung out in your dimension for a change? No. It's fine. There's nothing more to do there than there is here. Hey, I know you came here for something different. Don't you think I need something different sometimes? Well, yes, but going through that portal is not the answer. Why not? I haven't cleaned in so long. Why did you even need to come here anyway? My house is going through renovations. I'd like to see it. You can't. And then they start to argue for a while. Look. What was that? I don't know! Didn't you make it? Did I make that? I think so. What the frick? Okay, hold on. Hold on. Maybe we're both going nuts. Try doing it again.
But I don't know how I did it.
The magic ball disappeared instantly, so slower this time, Jazz tries to recreate it, which works. It's glowing in these brilliant colors and it gives off heat, so they decide to call Phineas and Ferb to come check it out. Honestly, I think this magic ball takes inspiration from that one Rhett and Link skit from 2009 where they're clearly just fucking around with After Effects for 3 minutes.
When I woke up this morning, I had the ability to do this.
I ended up using the magic ball discovery motif for a few stories over the years, but this is the one where it matters. So Phineas and Ferb show up along with Isabella and Harriet, and Jazz shows them the magic ball, but this time it drags her across the room to her wall on the other side. It adheres itself there, and it opens up and hollows out into a forest path on the other side of this portal. This is where I'm going to start giving you guys full illustrations of what's going on, because I have a few. I will be posting them to my Tumblr and my Blue Sky and places you can find me in the description. Harriet jumps through first once they determine that they can breathe the air on the other side because she is absolutely fiending for adventure. Followed by Phineas, Ferb, and Isabella, and before Jazz goes in, she noticed Ruff is looking a little bit nervous.
Are you coming? Well, we don't really know what's in there, right? Maybe it would be better if Oh, yeah, I'm sure you'd rather head back to your dimension anyway. See how all those house renovations are going? On second thought, it is such a lovely day, and, I need to get out more anyway. So, I'm just gonna tag along with you guys. It's a sense of adventure and all that.
When they get to the other side of the portal, they notice they're up the road from a village where they can hear music playing, situated in a lush green forest. They follow the road into town where they discover that it's the Spring Festival. And while none of the festivities stop for them, all of the people around them are, staring at them. For context, the tunes still look as toony as ever. So once again, I will be directing you to Space Jam for an example of what these visuals are. Phineas and Ferb and company get excited about things like the town's rudimentary theme park and street attractions. Ruff gets excited about the food, and that leaves Jasmine just wandering around the streets by herself. She's the type to just kind of silently take everything in, but when she asks a street vendor what this festival is about, she learns that it's to celebrate the eventual coming of a being called the Brain Changer, which is essentially this world's god. Phineas and Ferb trick out a water slide for the kids, and everyone loves the tunes. They're super excited to see them, and it feels like they're expecting them to do something specific, but none of them know what it is. The festivals are called short when a big black airship comes just slowly coming in over the sky of the village. It lands in a field, and a bunch of soldiers come out, and they line a path for a woman who steps out of the ship.
Greetings, light ones. I see the Spring Festival is still going on. How quaint.
One of the villagers asks her why she's going against the treaty, but she assures them that what she's doing is completely legal. When she specifies that she's looking for Niluli Buruku, the whole crowd gasps and starts chatting among themselves. Our group of friends has joined back up again, but Jasmine's eyes are darting around the place. We need to leave. I'm not sure why exactly, I just know we need to get out of here. Well, can we just hide somewhere and come back out later? No, it has to be now. We need to go! So the woman wearing all the black and looking evil looks in that direction. And then there's a big chase scene where Jasmine's trying to evade these guards chasing after her. She tries to summon a magic ball as an attack, but when she throws it, it hits a wall and turns into a portal, so the guards just kind of laugh at her. And eventually she is overpowered and taken hostage. After the ship leaves with Jasmine aboard, the rest of the crew realizes that all of the townspeople have gone home as well. The only natural course of action is to find out where they took her, but without anyone around to ask, they find a library and start looking inside.
All of these books are in some kind of weird foreign language. Ferb? Same here. Not a single one of these books is written in English. What was that thing she said she was looking for? Something like Narali Baraka, Neruli Boot Shine, I don't know.
The librarian who appears seems to know what's going on. This woman was looking for Niluli Buruku, and assuming that she did capture her target, If no one can save Jasmine from the spirit of darkness, oh my god. If no one can save Jasmine from the spirit of darkness, everyone will be in danger. So they tell the crew to travel west to find the primary base of the Guard, who might be able to help them fight the Dark Realm. The journey takes a day, and they start a fire and camp out in the woods. The sky above them is filled with crazy ambient colors, and they don't recognize any of the stars, and it just looks so different than any sky they've seen before. What they additionally notice is that the sky to the west has taken on a slightly reddish color, and every time they look back at it, it's a little more red. The next morning, they're continuing down the path when they're stopped by a black woman in a soldier's outfit. Her hair's done up in micro braids, and the micro braids are pulled back into a ponytail. It looks like she's on some kind of sentry duty, so when she sees the Toons, she immediately stops them and starts questioning them. How they got there, where they're going, what their business is. So when Phineas explains that this evil lady was looking for something called Niluli Buruku, her whole demeanor changes, and she takes them back to the base with her, introducing herself as Sergeant Amina Dalla, who is a member of the Outer Realm Guard. She asks them if they know anything about the slowly darkening western sky, but they have no idea. In the fields around the base are troops doing various military exercises, but she is taking them inside this huge stone castle-looking stronghold. When she gets to the entrance, she greets the man watching the door and requests an audience with Colonel Ellingard. The man denies her request until she specifies that it's a code Omega. So the guard takes her request seriously and sends for the colonel. This is the most hard-ass military brat you've ever seen. Colonel Iron Glory Ellingard. Extremely pissed to see a sergeant call a code Omega, but figures out what's going on when the Toons introduce themselves. They all go into this conference room that looks surprisingly modern given the look of the exterior, and the Colonel and Sergeant Dalla come back in with a thick leather book. The Colonel sets it down on the table and starts explaining what's happening. The dimension our heroes have come to is called the Outer Realm, the medium between the forces of good and evil, and the point of origin of a being called the Brain Changer. The Brain Changer is the high protector of the multiverse, and the manifestation of its purest energy. Only they can keep the energies of the universe in balance and stop their counterpart, the Spirit of Darkness, from destroying it. Before the Brain Changer comes of age, the Spirit of Darkness has the opportunity to grow in power. Oftentimes, the very first encounter the Brain Changer has with the Spirit is the most difficult, and is referred to as their rite of passage, or their realization as the Brain Changer. The Outer Realm experiences seasons parallel to the Brain Changer's life. Spring during the years leading up to their rite of passage, summer during the primary years of their reign, fall in their elder years, and winter in between one Brain Changer's death and the next Brain Changer's teenage years. So the Spring Festival doesn't just occur in the springtime, it occurs once a year during the season of spring, which so far has lasted 3 years. The fact that the Toons are even in the Outer Realm is all the confirmation they need that Jasmine is the one they're looking for, because only the Brain Changer can access this dimension before the rite of passage is complete. This has the Toons absolutely floored, and for good reason. How do you even react to something like this? Amina explains how they'll all be in grave danger if Jasmine can't control her powers quickly. And it's even more concerning because usually a Brain Changer's rite of passage happens around age 22, but the current situation is forcing it to happen now, and she's only 14. So how exactly are the Toons going to save her? Using this? Before the Colonel can react, Amina puts on a satin glove and pulls a small silver box from her satchel. She opens it carefully and holds up what's inside. A small, glowing blue crystal on a silver chain. This is the Spirit Stone. It's traditionally presented to the Brain Changer before the battle of their rite of passage takes place. As the power of the Brain Changer is infinite, it must be channeled through an object of strong magical resistance in order to keep them from being destroyed by their own ability. The Colonel is like, yo, why the fuck do you have that? And also, they won't be able to do anything with it because only a protector can touch the stone. Amina looks Colonel Ellingard squarely in the eye and says, "It's a good thing we have two right here then." And she looks over at Phineas and Ruff. Phineas and Ruff just look at each other, and Ruff turns back and he goes, "What's a protector?" The Colonel tells Amina how she can't possibly know that these two are protectors because that would require either the Brain Changer or the Elders to see it. So the primary base of the Outer Realm Guard isn't just for housing the military, it's also home to the Elders, a small council of the wisest sages in the Outer Realm who aid the Brain Changer in their journey throughout life. They are well versed in knowledge of the Light Spirit's abilities in past lives, and they also keep the Spirit Stone in between incarnations and present it to the Brain Changer during their rite of passage. So, magic sense is how the Elders can tell when the next Brain Changer has entered the Outer Realm, and it's also how the Brain Changer can sense protectors. So the Brain Changer is the guardian of the whole multiverse, right? But one person can't go on protecting all those dimensions by themselves. So a Toon Protector is someone born in a certain dimension with a level of innate magic, like they're born with the ability to control it, whose mission is to aid the Brain Changer in protecting their dimension from the spirit of darkness. 9 times out of 10, this will be the protagonist of whatever form of media the dimension is the source of. So all of the media in our dimension, books, TV shows, video games, all of it, is based on a dimension that's somewhere out in a multiverse called the Mediatrix. That's Media Matrix. The people who live in those dimensions are known as Toons, and with every dimension, there is also a Toon Protector. So anyway, Amina insists that she's able to sense the magical signatures of Phineas and Ruff because she's been practicing magic sense. So when she holds up the stone in front of them, it flashes and glimmers and streams of light pour out and surround them, and when the light fades, Phineas and Ruff are wearing these brilliantly colored suits made of pure magic. They're glowing and sparks dance on their fingertips, and it's a sight to behold. So now Ellenguard's like, oh shit, they need to see the Elders, and takes the whole group up a large set of spiral stairs up a tower. The council probes them for information, like how Jasmine unlocked her powers so soon, and how she was able to make friends with Toons before she even made it to the Outer Realm. So Phineas explains how he and Ferb got to the real-life dimension, which is called Homeworld, through a portal that they made. Which surprises the Elders because that's not supposed to be possible unless you're the Brain Changer or a Protector. So yeah, I did just establish that Phineas is a Protector, but Protector's powers need to be unlocked by the power of the Spirit Stone, so he's never been able to access these powers, and they are not the reason that Phineas and Ferb's portal broke through. The group describes how the Spirit of Darkness was able to kidnap Jasmine, and the Elders decide that it has to be this group that must go to rescue her from the Dark Realm. They note how the sky has been darkening in the west, and they say it's yet another confirmation that the Brain Changer's rite of passage is underway, because it's a sign that the Spirit of Darkness is getting stronger. Now, in order for the group to be successful, all of them are going to need magical abilities. So the Elders create Ferb, Isabella, and Harriet as honorary protectors, whose ability set is unique to the individual. Ferb's ability is technology manipulation. He can basically affect how pieces of tech work and machines and machinery. And I guess, in a sense, also, like, potential and kinetic energy, because he can do simple machines or, like, technological machines. Harriet's ability is electricity manipulation, so basically Ferb's ability in its raw form. Isabella's ability is aura manipulation, and it's definitely the coolest of the three. Every living being has an aura, and every color of aura is associated with certain magical abilities. So Isabella can come into contact with one color of aura at a time and use the abilities that are associated with it. You can determine the color of a person's aura based on their personality, but it helps if you're able to see it like Isabella can. Now that all of their powers are unlocked, they're given a map. The Light Realm and the Dark Realm are separated by a sea known as the Eventualist Expanse. No one has ever crossed this sea successfully, and most people trying to travel between the realms take the land route. One teeny tiny strip of land that's heavily guarded on either end year-round. It's incredibly risky, but it has a higher chance of success than crossing the Expanse ever would. And the Elders want to take no chances. Given the fact that their heroes have no idea how to use magic, they allow the group a day to be trained on the basic concepts of magic. Right after the doors to the compound shut, Phineas turns to Ruff. He's been having some issues because they drilled a lot to them about the colors of magic, but Ruff can't see color because he's a dog. So everything just looks the same to him. So I know dogs have, like, red-green colorblind, but Ruff is like a colorblind dog. So he sees in like monochrome, man. It's whack. Well, Phineas presents him with this beautiful pair of marbled blue glasses that he and Ferb had made the night before. There are a few cool things the glasses can do, but the most important thing is what happens the moment he puts them on. There's a gentle whirring that lasts a second, you see a flash of rainbow light cross the lenses, and Ruff's pupils get just a little bit bigger and they start catching the light differently, and for our boy, the world shimmers into vibrant color. He's overwhelmed, naturally, and I can't imagine many scenarios where he wouldn't bust out bawling. But this is the sort of beauty that crying too hard would take away. So, real quietly, he's all like, thank you. I'll be real, in all my years thinking about this story, the specifics of what happens to them while on the actual journey have always eluded me. Phineas is trying hard to put on a brave face as the noble leader of his friend group. Isabella's trying her best to support him. Ruff is scared shitless. Harriet is way too trigger-happy with her powers, and Ferb just wants her to chill the fuck out. There are more than a few little arguments Ferb and Harriet get into, because their personalities are polar opposites. But that's why I had their power sets work better together. Most of their journey involves them discovering little things about their powers, like how Isabella's able to use healing magic if she taps into green aura, which is what she herself has. And also that Phineas's hair glows when he uses his magic. It was dim at first, which is probably why no one noticed it, but it only happens to protectors with the strongest natural affinity for magic. So that's why it's only happening to Phineas and not Ruff. But anyway, their next destination is a port city called Bluecliff. The shipping industry in the Light Realm isn't the most efficient thing in the world, because absolutely no one goes more than a couple miles out into the Eventualist Expanse. So all of the shipping happens going up and down the coastline. They're supposed to follow the coastline south to the land bridge, but they take another look at the map, and they realize that their destination, the Dark Realm capital city of Vorkach, is pretty much a straight shot across the sea from where they are. And the sea's only supposed to be about 50 miles across in this spot. So to go south to the land bridge and then back up would add another couple days to their journey. And they're running out of time because the sky to the west just keeps getting darker and redder every hour. After some thought, they decide that they have to try crossing the sea if they want to find Jasmine before it's too late. So they enter Bluecliff, and they find their way to the town square, and the officials have been expecting them. So they explain how, hey, we're planning to cross the sea, can you get us a boat? And the officials are like, what the hell, you can't just cross the expanse, that's ridiculous! But everyone points out how the slowly darkening sky is intensifying, and they're like, we have magic, we'll be okay. And they're running out of time. So the officials set them up with food and water and a speedboat, and they wish them luck. Crossing isn't so bad until a storm starts brewing. They try to use their magic to break the waves, but the waves are too strong. It's almost like this storm is, like, magically charged. So they're trying to, like, batten down the hatches, basically, and try to get through, but the boat capsizes and it's super dramatic. Like, dramatic music starts playing. Drop to black. So I wrote this really, like, descriptive intro to the next part of the story here. I wrote this about a year ago, and it's kind of insane. Ruff awoke to the sound of waves lapping gently against the shore. Blinking into the light of the sun, he sat up in the shallows. He shivered at the cold that enveloped him, chilling him to the core after being asleep in the water. Where was he? When he realized he was unable to focus, he rubbed his eyes and instinctively felt around, plucking his glasses, intact by some miracle, from the water and fixing them into place on his nose. At once the world shimmered into colorful clarity, and he found he was facing the seemingly endless Eventualist Expanse on a cloudless morning. And then he remembered how he got there. He whipped around and scanned the area, trying to locate any of his friends or the wreckage of their speedboat. Momentarily, he was struck by the beauty of the place where he had found himself. A forest of tall pines lined the beach, which consisted of large stones rather than sand, some 20 meters in from the shoreline. High, rocky cliffs rose up and surrounded him, curving inward and defining the seclusion of the bay. The break of the waves against the rocks could have lulled him back to sleep right then and there. Birds were chirping happily, and the call of a passing seagull could be heard overhead. So this is a remote island in the middle of the sea. Ruff gets up and he starts calling out, like, guys, is anyone here? And Isabella finds him, and then she takes him back to, like, the camp that Phineas and Ferb have put up. So, yeah, they're stranded, basically. And they kind of, like, sit there and strategize for a little bit, and the sky is still, like, getting, like, super angry, dark, and red. This is where the plot points get, like, really, like, far apart and weird because I haven't, like, defined it all. They build a new boat, and they get out of there. There's no storm that happens now. The storm has passed. They make it to the mainland of the Dark Realm, and they travel across. They're going, like, covert, basically, because they don't know how many enemies are around. They make it to the capital city, and it's, like, this industrialist nightmare, right? But also combined with, like, villageness. It's weird. There's a weird combination. But they sneak through the capital city, and this fortress is, like, huge and foreboding. I actually drew a picture when I was, like, 9 or 10 of the fortress in the original 2012 Dreams of Magic. Look at this shit. That is... have you ever seen a scarier looking fortress in all your life? Ruff hasn't. Look at... yeah. But when they get to the fortress, they are met with some legions of soldiers, and they do battle, but there's so many of them that they can't really break through. And they're all trying to get to the stone, which is in Phineas's pocket. These soldiers actually aren't really able to touch it, but they have, like, a container they'll be able to put it in. If the Spirit of Darkness were to get her hands on the stone, then she would, like, corrupt it instantly. Like, all of the pure magic would turn into evil magic, I guess. Ruff comes up with a plan, actually. He takes the stone from Phineas, and he runs off to find Jasmine somewhere else. Like, gets away from the commotion and goes around. As he's running around, he's like, there's gotta be something this magic rock isn't telling us. And the stone is getting, like, brighter and brighter, and it's basically acting like a homing device to, presumably Jasmine. He sees, like, a figure in the distance, and he's like, oh my god, Jasmine, is that you? I've got your goofy stone, I'll bring it to you. And, as he gets closer to this figure, he finds out, uh-oh, it's actually the Spirit of Darkness, and her whole shtick is that she looks exactly like Jasmine, because the Spirit of Darkness takes on the form of the current Brain Changer. Ruff gets captured by this evil version of Jasmine, but she doesn't know that he has the stone with him. Meanwhile, the rest of the group finds real Jasmine, whose powers have been, like, amplifying, and she was able to, like, break out of her magic cell. And they ask her, hey, did Ruff get to you? Do you have the stone? And she's like, what stone? Like, no, you guys are the first I've seen. I don't know. What stone? So they realize that Ruff is probably in trouble, and they make it to this big open main chamber, and there's a big dark energy reactor at the center. And EJ is there with Ruff up on, like, a catwalk kind of thing, and she's about to toss him in as I don't know, like, the cannon fodder. Like, I guess he's got a lot of magic in him that could be cooked out of him. I don't know. Jasmine busts out from another door. She didn't, like, go directly in with Phineas and Ferb and the gang. She, like, went around a different way to make, like, a surprise entrance. Ruff is able to get his hand free because he's, like, tied up. And in a big epic moment, he's like, Jasmine! Ah! And he throws her the stone. And it's big and it's epic. And she catches it. She puts it around her neck. It starts glowing. She gets, like, a transformation sequence into a cool outfit, and she immediately fucks up all the dark soldiers, and her brain changer outfit is white with glowing blue accents. It's cool. She gets up to the platform where this evil Jasmine has Ruff. In the commotion, he managed to escape his bindings and get away. She and, EJ, we'll say, have a fight. Jazz overpowers her. It's big and it's epic, and I don't really know what happens in it. They win. Yeah, I'm not good at telling these stories that I haven't really written yet. One day I will put it more in depth, and I'll put it on, like, Tumblr or something. I don't know. It's big and it's epic and it's a fight. I think a lot of writers write fights that way. Anyway, our crew comes back over the land bridge to the capital city of the Light Realm, which is called Nil Etana. Spring has turned to summer, and there is a big celebration happening for the coronation of the Brain Changer. And there's a sequence I have in my head where there's like a song that plays, and then she's like doing the coronation. She walks up there, she's flanked by Phineas and Ruff, who are then flanked by Ferb, Isabella, and Harriet. It's not like a swearing in kind of thing, it's more of like a coronation, but it's more like a presentation, like, here is your brain changer. Maybe there's like an elders saying a prayer thing in there. That could be interesting. I'm literally coming up with this on the spot. When they get back to the real world, homeworld, it's been like a week since they were there. So Jasmine's like, holy shit, I've been gone for a week. She rushes down the stairs to let her mom know that she's okay, but her mom is still putting away the groceries she had come in with at the beginning of the story. And her mom's like, what the fuck are you talking about? So everyone realized that no time had passed while they were in the Outer Realm. So that's the end of Dreams of Magic. Jasmine is the god of the universe. Hooray. So in between part 2 and part 3, there's supposed to be what are called canon crossovers. So as the Brain Changer, Jasmine's main job is to stop the Spirit of Darkness from corrupting dimensions of the Mediatrix and, like, stop her from growing her domain, basically, and gaining power and destroying the multiverse. And she does that by going to the whatever universe EJ is attacking and finding and unlocking the powers of that universe's protector. And these usually coincide with, like, different shows and forms of media. In part 2, there's a crossover for Word Girl, there's, like, Sonic, Mario, and I don't think Mario's in here. Jimmy Neutron is probably in here. All of these are, like, concepts I have in my brain that I will put out videos for. Those will be, like, single-serving videos, basically, as opposed to this one, which is, like, we're gonna talk about the whole part at once. So, yeah, the time between part 2 and part 3 basically comes down to Jasmine stopping the Spirit of Darkness, and we're growing our relationships and learning more about our powers. And that's where, like, a lot of the character development really happens, is during these canon crossovers. And they're only canon when I talk about them. If someone out there had an idea for a crossover with a show that I'm not familiar with, then, like, you could go out and write about it, and it's like, who's to say that wouldn't be canon, you know? But anyway, that was part 1 and part 2 of PFJ, and the parts only get longer from here. But they also get more matured and interesting from here. So if you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, comment, do all the things that you do with your YouTube powers. I don't know. Until next time, for PFJ, I'm J Money.